Maya was 12 years old when she found the strange map inside her grandmother's old wooden chest. And her heart beat faster as she looked at the yellow paper covered with mysterious drawings and symbols that she had never seen before in her entire life. Her grandmother had passed away last winter, and Maya's family had moved into the old house at the edge of the small village called Greenbrook, where the mountains rose high into the clouds and the forests stretched far beyond what anyone could see. The map showed a valley that was hidden between two mountains, and there was a red circle drawn around something called the Keeper's Cave, which made Maya very curious about what secrets might be waiting there. She ran downstairs to find her older brother Sam, who was 16 and always acted like he knew everything about the world. But Maya thought he would want to see this amazing discovery. "Sam, look what I found!" she shouted as she burst into the kitchen where he was eating breakfast. Sam looked up from his cereal bowl and rolled his eyes at first. But when he saw the old map in her hands, his expression changed completely, and he stood up quickly to get a closer look. "Where did you find this?" he asked with excitement growing in his voice. Maya explained about the wooden chest in the attic, and how she had been looking through their grandmother's old things when she discovered a secret compartment at the bottom that held this treasure. Sam studied the map carefully, turning it this way and that way, and his eyes grew wider as he recognized some of the landmarks drawn on the paper. "I think this shows the area behind Miller's Mountain," he said, pointing to a triangle shape on the map. "Grandma always told us stories about a hidden valley where magical things happened, but I thought she was just making up fairy tales." Maya felt a shiver run down her spine because she remembered those stories too. And now she wondered if their grandmother had been telling the truth all along. The two siblings spent the whole morning studying the map and making plans. And they decided they would pack supplies and go searching for the hidden valley the very next day. Their parents were away on a business trip for the whole week, and Mrs. Henderson from next door was supposed to check on them every evening, which meant they had plenty of time for an adventure. That night, Maya could barely sleep because her mind was racing with thoughts about what they might find, and she kept imagining caves full of treasure and mysterious creatures hiding in the shadows. When morning came, the sun was bright and the sky was clear blue without a single cloud, which seemed like a perfect sign for their expedition. Sam had packed 2 backpacks with sandwiches, water bottles, flashlights, rope, and a first aid kit, because he said that any good explorer needed to be prepared for anything. They left a note on the kitchen table saying they had gone hiking and would be back before dark, which was not exactly a lie, but also not the complete truth. The path toward Miller's Mountain started at the end of their street and wound through beautiful meadows filled with wildflowers of every color imaginable. Maya picked a few purple flowers to put in her hair, and Sam laughed at her, but in a kind way that made her smile. After walking for about 2 hours, they reached the base of the mountain where the forest began, and the trees were so tall and thick that the sunlight could only peek through in small golden patches. According to the map, "We need to find a river and follow it upstream until we reach a waterfall," Sam said. Squinting at the old paper, they could hear the sound of rushing water somewhere to their left. So they pushed through the bushes and ferns until they found a beautiful clear river flowing over smooth rocks. The water was so clean that Maya could see small fish swimming near the bottom, and she wished she could stop and play. But they had an important mission to complete. Following the river was harder than they expected because the ground was uneven and covered with slippery moss, and Maya almost fell twice before Sam took her hand to help her. Hours passed and the sun moved across the sky, and just when Maya was starting to feel tired and hungry, they heard a tremendous roaring sound ahead. "That must be the waterfall," she exclaimed, her energy suddenly returning. They climbed over a ridge of large boulders and gasped at what they saw before them. The waterfall was enormous, at least 50 feet high, and the water crashed down into a pool that sparkled like diamonds in the afternoon light. But that was not what made them gasp. It was the cave behind the waterfall that took their breath away. The opening was huge and dark, and strange symbols were carved into the rock around it, matching the same symbols they had seen on the map. "This is it," Sam whispered. "This must be the entrance to the hidden valley." Maya felt both excited and scared at the same time, and she grabbed her brother's arm as they stood there. Staring at the mysterious cave, they noticed that there was a narrow ledge along the cliff face that would allow them to walk behind the waterfall and into the cave. But it looked dangerous and slippery. "Should we go in?" Maya asked, her voice trembling just a little bit. Sam thought about it for a long moment, looking at the cave and then at his little sister, and then back at the cave again. "We have come this far," he finally said. "I think Grandma wanted us to find this place, and I think she would want us to be brave enough to discover what is inside." Maya nodded. Even though her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, they started making their way along the narrow ledge, pressing their backs against the wet rock wall as the waterfall roared beside them. The spray from the water soaked their clothes and made it hard to see. But they kept moving forward, one careful step at a time, when they finally reached the cave entrance. They stepped inside, and the sound of the waterfall became muffled behind them. Sam pulled out his flashlight and turned it on, and the beam of light revealed a tunnel stretching deep into the mountain. The walls were covered with more of those strange symbols, and they seemed to glow faintly with a soft blue light that made everything look magical. "This is amazing," Maya breathed, reaching out to touch one of the glowing symbols. The moment her fingers touched the wall, something incredible happened that neither of them could have ever expected. And their adventure was only just beginning. The moment Maya's fingers touched the glowing symbol on the cave wall, the entire tunnel began to shake and rumble like thunder was rolling through the mountain itself. Sam grabbed his sister and pulled her close, ready to run back outside if the cave started collapsing. But then something wonderful happened instead of something terrible. The symbols on the walls lit up one after another in a beautiful wave of blue light that traveled deeper into the tunnel, and a warm, gentle breeze began flowing toward them from somewhere far ahead. "I think it wants us to follow," Maya said, feeling strangely calm even though everything was so extraordinary. They walked deeper into the tunnel, following the trail of glowing symbols, and the path twisted and turned until they completely lost track of which direction they were going. After what felt like forever, they saw bright light ahead that was not coming from Sam's flashlight, and it was warm golden light like sunshine. They emerged from the tunnel and found themselves standing on a cliff overlooking the most beautiful valley they had ever seen or even imagined in their wildest dreams. Green meadows stretched across the valley floor, dotted with flowers and colors that Maya did not even have names for, and a sparkling river wound through the center like a silver ribbon. There were trees with leaves of purple and gold and pink, and strange birds flew through the air singing songs that sounded almost like laughter. "It is real," Sam whispered, unable to believe what his own eyes were showing him. "The hidden valley is actually real." A stone staircase was carved into the cliff face, leading down to the valley floor, and it looked ancient but still safe enough to walk on. They descended carefully, and with each step, the air felt warmer and sweeter, filled with the scent of flowers and fresh water. When they reached the bottom, Maya immediately ran into the meadow and spun around with her arms spread wide, laughing with pure joy. Sam was more cautious, looking around for any signs of danger, but all he could see was beauty and peace in every direction. "Hello there, young travelers." The voice came from behind them, and they spun around to see an old man walking toward them with a friendly smile on his wrinkled face. He had a long white beard that reached his chest, and he wore simple brown clothes that looked like they were made from leaves and bark woven together. His eyes were bright green, the same color as the meadow grass, and they sparkled with kindness and wisdom. "Who are you?" Sam asked, stepping protectively in front of Maya. "My name is Orion, and I am the keeper of this valley," the old man answered with a gentle bow. "I have been waiting a very long time for you two to arrive." Maya peeked out from behind her brother and asked, "You were waiting for us, but how could you know we were coming?" Orion's smile grew even wider as he reached into his pocket and pulled out something that made both children gasp in surprise. It was a small painted portrait, and the picture showed two young faces that looked exactly like Sam and Maya. Though the painting seemed very old with cracks in the paint and faded colors. "Your grandmother painted this many years ago when she was the last person to visit our valley," Orion explained. "She told me that one day her grandchildren would find the map and continue her adventure." Tears formed in Maya's eyes because she missed her grandmother so much. And hearing that she had been here in this magical place made her feel like Grandma was still with them somehow. "Why did our grandmother come here?" Sam asked, his voice softer now that he understood this man was a friend. Orion began walking toward a path that led through the meadow, and he gestured for them to follow as he began to tell them an amazing story long ago. The hidden valley was part of the normal world, and people could come and go freely to enjoy its beauty and magic. But then greedy people came, who wanted to steal the valley's treasures and destroy its wonders. So the ancient keepers used powerful magic to hide the valley between the mountains. Only those with pure hearts and good intentions could find the entrance, and only those connected to previous visitors would be allowed inside. Your grandmother came here as a young woman, lost and afraid during a terrible storm, Orion continued. The valley welcomed her because her heart was kind and brave. She had stayed for 3 days, learning about the valley's secrets and making friends with the creatures who lived there. And she had promised to protect the valley's secret for the rest of her life before she left. She had drawn the map and painted the portrait, knowing that someday her family would need to find this place again. But why would we need to find it? Maya asked, walking beside the old keeper with wonder in her eyes. Orion's expression became serious for the first time, and he stopped walking to look at both children with concern on his face. "Because the valley is in danger," he said quietly. "Something dark has been growing at the far end of the valley near Shadow Mountain, and the magic that protects this place is becoming weaker every day." He explained that the valley needed someone young and pure of heart to help restore the magic. And the ancient prophecy said that children from the family of a past visitor would be the ones to save everything. "Our grandmother must have known this would happen," Sam said thoughtfully. "That is why she kept the map hidden all those years." Orion nodded and started walking again, leading them toward a cluster of small houses made from living trees that had grown together to form cozy homes. "You must be hungry and tired from your journey," he said. "First you will rest and eat, and tomorrow I will show you the source of the darkness and explain what must be done." The tree houses were amazing, with rooms inside that had soft beds made of moss and flowers, and windows that looked out at the beautiful valley. Other people lived in the valley too, and they came out to greet the children with warm smiles and gifts of fruit and sweet bread. There were also creatures that Maya had only seen in storybooks, like tiny fairies that glowed with soft light and fluffy animals that could speak in gentle voices. A small rabbit-like creature with silver fur and long ears hopped up to Maya and introduced itself as Pip, saying it would be her guide and friend during their stay. Sam was met by a young man named Felix, who was only a few years older than him, and Felix said he would teach Sam about the valley's history and help him prepare for whatever challenges lay ahead. That night, as Maya lay in her soft flower bed with Pip curled up beside her, she thought about everything that had happened that day. She had woken up as a normal girl in a normal house, And now she was in a magical hidden valley with a mission to save it from darkness. Through her window, she could see strange stars in the sky that formed patterns she had never seen before. And they seemed to be watching over the valley like guardians in the treehouse next door. Sam was also lying awake, thinking about the responsibility that had been placed on their shoulders. He wondered if they were really strong enough and brave enough to do whatever needed to be done. And he promised himself that he would protect Maya no matter what dangers they faced. The night sounds of the valley were different from anything they knew, with soft music that seemed to come from the flowers themselves and distant calls of mysterious creatures in the forest. When morning came, Orion arrived at their door with breakfast and a serious expression on his face. "Today, I will take you to see the Shadow Gate," he announced, "and you will understand why your grandmother sent you here and what you must do to save us all." Maya and Sam looked at each other with determination in their eyes, ready to face whatever adventure awaited them next. After breakfast, Orion led Sam and Maya along a winding path that took them away from the beautiful meadows and toward a darker part of the valley where the colors seemed faded and the air felt colder. Tip the silver rabbit hopped alongside Maya, and Felix walked with Sam, both of them looking nervous as they traveled further from the safety of the tree houses. The flowers became fewer as they walked, and the grass turned from bright green to dull brown, and even the sky above them seemed to grow gray and cloudy. "This is where the darkness is spreading from," Orion explained, his voice heavy with sadness. "Every week it reaches a little further, and every week more of our beautiful valley dies." Maya felt her heart ache as she saw a patch of flowers that were wilting and turning black, and she knelt down to touch them gently with her fingers. "Can we not stop it?" she asked, looking up at the old keeper with tears forming in her eyes. "That is why you are here, child," Orion replied kindly. "Only you and your brother can reach the source of the darkness and undo what has been done." They continued walking until they reached the base of a dark mountain that rose up like a giant shadow against the sky. And at the bottom was a gate made of black stone covered with twisted vines. The gate was enormous, at least 30 feet tall, and it had carvings on it that looked like screaming faces and clawing hands, which made Maya shiver with fear. "This is the Shadow Gate," Felix said quietly. "It has been sealed for hundreds of years, but somehow the seal is breaking." Sam stepped closer to examine the gate and saw that there were cracks running through the stone, and through those cracks, dark smoke was slowly seeping out into the valley. "What is behind this gate?" he asked. Not sure if he really wanted to know the answer, Orion sat down on a fallen log and invited them to sit with him. And then he began to tell them the full story of the valley's history long ago. When the valley was still part of the normal world, there was a powerful wizard named Mordecai who became jealous of the valley's beauty and magic. He believed that all the magic should belong to him alone, and he began stealing it from the land and the creatures, storing it inside his own heart. But the magic was never meant to be held by one person, and it twisted Mordecai into something dark and terrible, turning his soul into pure shadow. The other keepers of that time worked together to stop him, and they managed to trap his shadow form behind this gate using all of their combined power. They sealed the gate with 3 magical crystals called the Lights of Dawn, and as long as the crystals remained in place, Mordecai could never escape. But 200 years ago, a thief found his way into the valley. Orion continued with great sorrow in his voice. He stole the 3 crystals, thinking they were ordinary gems worth money. The thief escaped before anyone could stop him, and he took the Lights of Dawn back into the outside world, where they were lost and scattered without the crystals. The seal on the Shadow Gate began slowly weakening, year after year, crack by crack, until now when it was almost completely broken. If Mordecai escapes, He will destroy everything, Felix added grimly. Not just our valley, but your world too. Because his hunger for magic will never be satisfied. Maya clutched Pip tightly in her arms, feeling scared but also determined not to let this terrible thing happen. How do we stop him? Sam asked, standing up straight with courage in his heart. Tell us what we need to do. Orion reached into his robe and pulled out an old leather journal that Maya recognized immediately as her grandmother's. Handwriting was on the cover. Your grandmother did not only draw a map when she visited us, he explained, handing the journal to Sam. She also began searching for the lights of dawn in the outside world. The journal was filled with notes and sketches and clues, and it detailed years of research that their grandmother had done in secret. She had managed to track down where each of the 3 crystals had ended up after the thief sold them to different collectors. The first crystal was in a museum in the city of Millbrook, which was only a few hours from their village. The second crystal had been bought by a wealthy family who lived in a mansion on the coast near Seaport. The third crystal was the hardest to find because it had passed through many hands before ending up in an old antique shop somewhere in the capital city. Your grandmother was planning to collect them herself, Orion said. But she became ill before she could complete her mission. So she hid the journal in her chest along with the map, trusting that you would one day find them. Tears rolled down Maya's cheeks as she understood how much their grandmother had done for this valley and for them. Even keeping secrets to protect everyone. Sam flipped through the journal, studying the detailed notes and feeling amazed at how much work their grandmother had put into this quest. We have to do this, he said firmly, looking at his sister with determination. We have to find the 3 crystals and bring them back to seal the gate forever. Maya nodded, wiping her tears and standing up beside her brother with new strength in her heart. But there is something you must know, Orion warned them, his face very serious. Mordecai can sense the crystals, and he has servants in the outside world who will try to stop you. The wizard's shadow could reach beyond the gate in small ways, touching the minds of greedy and cruel people and turning them into his followers. These followers did not even know they were being controlled. They simply felt a strong desire to find the crystals and destroy them before they could be used against their master. You must be careful who you trust, Felix added, and you must move quickly before the gate breaks completely. Orion estimated they had maybe 2 weeks before the seal failed entirely, which was not much time to travel across the country and collect 3 ancient magical artifacts. There is one more thing that will help you, Pip said, speaking up for the first time during the conversation. The little silver rabbit hopped over to a bush and came back with 2 small pendants made of crystal that glowed with soft white light. These are protection charms, Orion explained, placing one around Maya's neck and one around Sam's. They will shield you from Mordecai's direct influence and help guide you to the lights of dawn. The pendants felt warm against their skin, and Maya immediately sensed a connection to the valley's magic flowing through the crystal. Thank you, she said to Orion and all their new friends. We will not let you down. They spent the rest of the day preparing for their journey, packing food that would not spoil and studying the journal until they had memorized every important detail. Felix gave Sam a compass that would always point toward the nearest light of dawn, and Pip gave Maya a tiny whistle that would summon help if they were ever in great danger. That night, the whole village gathered to wish them farewell and good luck, and the fairies created a beautiful display of lights in their honor. Remember, Orion said as he hugged them both goodbye, the greatest magic is not in crystals or spells. It is in the courage and love you carry in your hearts. At dawn the next morning, Sam and Maya walked back through the tunnel and emerged from behind the waterfall into the normal world once again. They looked back at the cave entrance one last time, promising silently that they would return. with the crystals and save everyone. Then they turned and began the long walk home to prepare for the real adventure that awaited them in the cities and towns of the outside world. The first light of dawn was waiting in Millbrook, and they would leave to find it as soon as possible. Their grandmother's quest had become their own, and they were ready to see it through to the end. Sam and Maya returned home that evening to find Mrs. Henderson knocking on their front door with a worried expression on her face. "Where have you two been?" she demanded, her hands on her hips as she looked at their muddy clothes and tired faces. Sam quickly explained that they had gone on a long hike and lost track of time, and he apologized for making her worry about them. Mrs. Henderson accepted the explanation, but warned them not to wander so far again while their parents were away. And she made them promise to stay close to home, of course. They had no intention of keeping that promise, because they had a world to save and very little time to do it. That night, they sat in Sam's room with the journal spread out between them, planning their trip to Millbrook, where the first light of dawn was displayed in a museum. "The journal says it is in the Millbrook History Museum," Maya read aloud. In a glass case in the room of ancient artifacts, Sam looked up train schedules on the old family computer and found that a train left from Millbrook every morning at 8 o'clock, and the journey would take about 3 hours. "We can leave tomorrow morning and be back before evening," he calculated. "Mrs. Henderson only checks on us after dinner, so she will never know we were gone." Maya felt nervous about sneaking away, but she knew this was more important than following rules, because thousands of lives depended on their success. They woke up before sunrise and quietly left the house, walking quickly to the train station, where they bought tickets with money from their savings jars. The train was almost empty at that early hour, and they found seats by the window where they could watch the countryside roll past as they traveled toward Millbrook. Maya kept touching her crystal pendant, feeling its warmth and remembering the beautiful valley and all the creatures counting on them. "What if someone catches us trying to take the crystal from the museum?" she asked her brother, voicing a worry that had been bothering her. Sam had thought about this too, and he had a plan that he hoped would work. "The journal says the museum has a back door that leads to an alley," he explained, showing her a sketch their grandmother had drawn. "And the security cameras do not cover that entrance because it is only used by workers." Their grandmother had spent months studying the museum layout and security systems, writing down everything they would need to know. She had even noted which guard worked which shift, and when the best time would be to slip into the building unnoticed. Maya was amazed at how thoroughly their grandmother had prepared for this mission, and she felt grateful that they were not going in blind. When the train arrived in Millbrook, they stepped onto the platform and looked around at the busy city streets. Millbrook was much bigger than their small village, with tall buildings and cars everywhere and people rushing in all directions. They followed the map in the journal and walked for about 20 minutes until they reached the Millbrook History Museum, a grand old building made of white stone with tall columns at the entrance. "It does not open until 10 o'clock, Sam observed, looking at the sign on the front door. "We have an hour to wait." They found a small park across the street where they could sit and watch the museum while they ate the sandwiches they had packed for the journey. Maya noticed a strange man standing near the museum entrance, wearing a dark coat even though the weather was warm, and something about him made her feel uneasy. "Sam, look at that man," she whispered, pointing carefully. "Does he seem strange to you?" Sam studied the figure and felt a chill run down his spine when the man suddenly turned and looked directly at them, as if he knew he was being watched. The man's eyes were dark and cold, and for just a moment they seemed to flash with an unnatural shadow before he turned and walked away down the street. "That might be one of Mordecai's followers," Sam said quietly, touching his protective pendant. "We need to be very careful." When the museum finally opened, they paid the entrance fee with more of their savings and walked inside. Trying to look like ordinary children on a school trip, the museum was full of interesting things from history, including old weapons and clothes and paintings and pottery from hundreds of years. But they were not there to look at the exhibits. They had a mission to complete, and the clock was ticking following the journal's directions. They found the room of ancient artifacts on the second floor, and there in a glass case in the corner was the most beautiful crystal they had ever seen. It was about the size of Maya's fist, perfectly clear with a soft golden glow inside it. And looking at it made her feel warm and hopeful. "That is definitely one of the lights of dawn," Sam confirmed, comparing it to the sketch in the journal. "Now we just need to figure out how to get it out of that case." They noticed that the case had a complicated lock and was connected to an alarm system that would sound if the glass was broken. "We cannot do this while the museum is open," Maya realized. "There are too many people and too many cameras." Sam agreed and suggested they come back later that night when the museum was closed. Using the back entrance that their grandmother had written about, they spent the rest of the day exploring Millbrook and waiting for night to fall, eating lunch at a small cafe and visiting a bookshop to pass the time as the sun went down and the streets became darker and quieter. They made their way back to the museum and found the alley behind the building, just as the journal had said. There was a small door that the workers used, and it had a simple lock that Sam was able to open with a hairpin like he had seen in movies. "I cannot believe that actually worked," he whispered. With surprise, as the door clicked open, they crept inside and found themselves in a storage room filled with boxes and old furniture covered in dusty sheets, using their flashlights carefully to avoid being seen through windows. They made their way through the dark hallways until they reached the room with the crystal. "How will we open the case without setting off the alarm?" Maya asked nervously. Sam examined the display case closely and found that it was controlled by an electrical system with wires running into the wall. He remembered something their father had taught him about electrical circuits, and he carefully disconnected the alarm wire before trying to open the case. His hands were shaking, but he managed to pick the lock just like he had done with the door. And slowly the glass lid swung open. Maya reached in and gently picked up the light of dawn, and the moment she touched it, the crystal blazed with brilliant golden light that filled the entire room. "What are you children doing here?" a voice shouted from the doorway. They spun around to see a security guard standing there with a flashlight, his face shocked and angry at catching them in the act. But then something terrible happened. The guard's eyes suddenly went dark like pools of shadow, and his voice changed to something cold and cruel. "Give me the crystal," he demanded in a voice that was not his own, stepping toward them with arms outstretched. "My master requires it to be destroyed." Maya screamed and clutched the crystal tightly while Sam stepped between her and the possessed guard, his heart pounding with fear. "Run!" Sam yelled, grabbing his sister's hand and pulling her toward a window at the end of the room. He picked up a chair and threw it through the glass, and they climbed out onto a fire escape just as the guard lunged for them with inhuman speed. They ran down the metal stairs as fast as they could, hearing the guard following them and shouting threats in that horrible shadowy voice. When they reached the ground, they sprinted through the alley and into the streets of Millbrook, not stopping until they had run for many blocks. Finally, they ducked into a dark corner behind some garbage bins, gasping for breath and trembling with shock. "We got it," Maya panted, holding up the glowing crystal that seemed to pulse with grateful energy. "We actually got the first light of dawn," Sam nodded, trying to catch his breath. And then he started laughing with relief and amazement at what they had just survived. But they knew this was only the beginning. 2 more crystals were waiting to be found, and now Mordecai's servants knew exactly who they were. They needed to get home and plan their next move, because the Shadow Gate was weakening more every day, and time was running out to save the Hidden Valley as they walked back toward the train station in the darkness. Maya looked at the glowing crystal in her hand and felt hope growing in her heart. One down, two to go, and nothing was going to stop them from completing their grandmother's quest. The next few days were the most exciting and dangerous of Sam and Maya's entire lives as they raced across the country to find the remaining two lights of dawn. After returning home from Millbrook, they had hidden the first crystal in a secret place in the garden and immediately started planning their trip to Seaport to find the second one. The journal explained that a wealthy family called the Harringtons had bought the crystal many years ago, believing it was just a beautiful gemstone worth a lot of money. Sam and Maya took a bus to the coastal town and found the Harrington mansion sitting on a cliff overlooking the stormy sea. The mansion was enormous and surrounded by high walls with iron gates, and guards patrolled the grounds day and night. "This is going to be much harder than the museum," Sam admitted as they watched from behind some bushes across the road. Maya felt something warm against her chest and looked down to see her pendant glowing brightly with a soft pulse. "I think the crystal is calling to me," she said with wonder. "I can feel exactly where it is inside that house." She closed her eyes and concentrated on the feeling. And somehow she knew that the light of dawn was in a safe on the 3rd floor, in a room at the north corner of the mansion. That must be the magic Orion talked about, Sam realized. The pendant is helping you sense the crystals. They waited until midnight when most of the lights in the mansion had gone out. And then Maya used her connection to the pendant to guide them through the shadows. Something amazing happened as they approached the walls. The guards seemed to look right through them as if they were invisible. And Maya realized the pendant was protecting them from being seen. They climbed a tree that hung over the wall and dropped into the garden, then found a trellis covered with vines that led up to a window on the 3rd floor. Sam's arms ached from climbing, but he pushed through the pain because giving up was not an option when so many lives were counting on them. They reached the window and found it was unlocked, which seemed almost too lucky, and they slipped inside to find themselves in a dark hallway. Maya followed the pull of the pendant to a heavy wooden door at the end of the hall, and behind it they found a room that looked like a private study, with bookshelves and a large desk. The safe was hidden behind a painting, just as Maya had sensed, and Sam used his growing lock-picking skills to crack it open. Inside was the second light of dawn, glowing with a beautiful silver light that mixed perfectly with the golden glow of the first crystal. 2 down, 1 to go. Sam grinned as Maya carefully placed the crystal in her backpack, but their luck ran out as they tried to leave. A light suddenly turned on, and standing in the doorway was an old woman in a nightgown with white hair and sharp, clever eyes. "I knew someone would come for it eventually," Mrs. Harrington said calmly. And to their shock, she was smiling at them. She explained that she had learned the truth about the crystal years ago from a letter left by her grandfather, who had bought it from the original thief. He spent his whole life feeling guilty about what he had helped hide, she told them. And he left instructions that if anyone ever came seeking the crystal for a good purpose, we should let them take it. The old woman asked them to sit down and tell her the whole story. And when they finished, she had tears in her eyes. "You brave children," she said kindly. "Take the crystal and save your valley. I know that my family is honored to help undo the wrong my grandfather committed." She even gave them money for their journey and arranged for her driver to take them safely back to the train station. The final crystal was the hardest to find because the antique shop in the capital city had closed down years ago, and the journal did not know where it had gone. After that, Sam and Maya spent 2 frustrating days searching through the capital, visiting every antique shop and asking about a glowing crystal that had once been sold there. Finally, when they were almost ready to give up hope, Maya's pendant began to glow and pull her toward a small junk shop in a forgotten corner of the city. Inside, the dusty shop filled with broken furniture and old toys They found an elderly man sleeping in a rocking chair with the third light of dawn sitting on a shelf beside him. The crystal was covered in dust and cobwebs, and it looked like it had been sitting there forgotten for decades when they tried to buy it. The old man woke up and looked at them with confusion, saying he had never seen that crystal before in his life. It must have been here so long that everyone forgot about it. Maya said as she paid for the crystal with the money Mrs. Harrington had given them, with all 3 lights of dawn finally in their possession. They rushed home and immediately set off for the hidden valley. When they emerged from behind the waterfall and saw the valley again, their hearts sank because the darkness had spread much further than before. Almost half of the beautiful meadows were now dead and gray, and the sky above Shadow Mountain was churning with black clouds. Orion and Felix met them at the bottom of the stone stairs, their faces showing relief and joy at seeing the children return safely. "You found all 3, Orion exclaimed, taking the crystals and examining them with amazement. "Your grandmother would be so proud of you." There was no time to celebrate because they could all feel the ground shaking as the shadow gate weakened more every minute. They ran through the dying landscape toward the dark mountain, and when they reached the gate, they saw that it was barely holding together at all. Cracks covered the entire surface now, and shadowy hands were pushing through from the other side, trying to break free. "Quickly, place the crystals in the 3 sockets around the gate," Orion commanded, pointing to 3 carved circles in the stone that they had not noticed before. Sam placed the golden crystal on the left. Maya placed the silver crystal on the right, and together they placed the 3rd crystal that glowed with pure white light at the top. The moment all 3 were in place, brilliant light exploded from the lights of dawn and wrapped around the entire gate like chains made of sunshine. A terrible scream of rage came from behind the gate as Mordecai felt his prison being sealed once again. This time stronger than ever before, the cracks began to close, and the shadowy hands retreated back into the darkness, and the whole gate glowed with magical energy that would hold for thousands of years. When the light finally faded, the shadow gate stood solid and unbroken, with the 3 crystals embedded in its surface and shining like stars. Maya collapsed to the ground, exhausted but incredibly happy, and Sam sat down beside her with the biggest smile on his face. "You did it," Pip cheered, hopping around them in circles of joy. "You actually saved us all." The valley began to heal almost immediately, with color returning to the dead grass and flowers blooming where there had only been gray ash. Birds that had fled from the darkness came back and sang their beautiful songs, and the creatures of the valley danced and celebrated their freedom. Orion knelt before Sam and Maya and thanked them with tears streaming down his face, calling them the greatest heroes the valley had ever known. They stayed in the valley for 2 more days, celebrating with their friends and saying goodbye to everyone they had grown to love. Before they left, Orion gave them a special gift, 2 small paintings that showed the valley at its most beautiful, so they would always remember what they had fought to protect. "You will always be welcome here," he promised them, "and the valley will always be grateful for what you have done." They walked back through the tunnel one last time and emerged into the sunlight of the normal world, knowing that a magical place would always exist just beyond the waterfall. When they got home, their parents had returned from their trip and were curious about the mud on their clothes and the tired but happy looks on their faces. "We just went on some adventures," Maya said with a secret smile at her brother. That night, as Maya lay in bed looking at the painting Orion had given her, she thought about their grandmother and how everything had started with finding that old map. She understood now that some secrets are worth keeping and some adventures are worth taking, no matter how scary they might seem, and she knew that whenever she missed the valley and her magical friends, all she had to do was walk into the forest and find the waterfall, and a whole world of wonder would be waiting for her. The hidden valley was safe. The shadow wizard was trapped forever, and two ordinary children from a small village had become heroes of a world that most people would never know existed. Maya smiled and closed her eyes, dreaming of purple trees and glowing fairies and a little silver rabbit named Pip, who had become one of her best friends in all the world. And somewhere far away, beyond mountains and waterfalls and magical gates, the hidden valley sparkled under strange stars, forever grateful to the brave young ones who had saved it from the darkness. Their grandmother had started a journey that she could not finish, but Sam and Maya had completed it for her, and that was the greatest adventure of all.